Before we break down some top free agent targets for the Cincinnati Bengals this offseason, who do you want the Bengals to go out and target? We'll focus on players not on this team, so Tee Higgins doesn't need to be an answer, but that certainly works too. Drop that player or players' names for me in the comments. NFL free agency will be here before you know it, so it is the perfect time to take a look at some top free agent targets for Cincinnati. Do make note, they have a lot of salary cap space. Per over the cap, $59 million in funds available for Cincinnati. Now, make no mistake, a good portion of that will go to some of their own players, including but not limited to Tee Higgins. You could free up more space, though, if you wanted to. Defensive line, offensive line, tight end, maybe running back also stand out as potential focal points for this team. So let's break down 20 different outside free agents this team could go after. First up, 3 splash big-time names, defensive tackle who may or may not actually reach the open market. First up is Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle from the Miami Dolphins, who may or may not get tagged. He's been a good run stopper and a pass rusher. A name you all know very well, Chris Jones, the Chiefs defensive tackle. Wouldn't it be something to pull away one of the better Chiefs linemen in back-to-back years? And then Justin Madubuike, the breakout player for the Baltimore Ravens this past season. The numbers for all 3 of these guys are really impressive. Now, Jones is older. That is a red flag. Wilkins and Madubuike are both younger, but you're talking double-digit TFLs and at or near double-digit sacks. I would argue, looking at the way this team is constructed, defensive tackle, with DJ Reader a free agent, BJ Hill under contract, and not much else I trust, DT might be this team's biggest need. If you could add an instant impact stud into the middle of your defense when you couldn't stop the run last year, had all kinds of issues getting pressure from the middle too, I think that would go a very long way to making this defense look more like the championship caliber one we saw during their team's playoff runs. So if you want to break the bank, or maybe the value isn't what you thought it was going to be for those guys and they come a little bit cheaper, doing another splash move like you did with Orlando Brown makes sense. So will the Bengals make another splash signing? Y for yes, N for no. It'll be today's pinned comment. So if the ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Let's hit some running backs here. Players that, it's a deep crop. You may or may not bring back Joe Mixon. Could make sense to explore. DeAndre Swift didn't have the touchdowns, had everything else when he wasn't getting vultured by Jalen Hurts, which is a good thing for Philadelphia, by the way. It works almost every time they do it. Why wouldn't you do that? Injury problems might bring down his value. Tony Pollard didn't have as good of a year this past season, but still had 1,000 yards and has offered the explosive plays this team seems to be searching for in the backfield. Devin Singletary had a nice season in Houston, kind of surpassing Dameon Pierce down the stretch. I think every NFL fan base has identified Zach Moss as the just sign the cheap option because there's all these big name backs. It goes like 10 or 15 deep of starting or rotational starting backfield options for teams. Zach Moss played very well for the Colts amid John Taylor's injury/holdout/injury again. 4.3 yards per carry, nearly 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. You want to add, if you walked in the year going, we're going to play Zach Moss and Chase Brown in the backfield, I think that works for me. I think it does. An even cheaper option is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who the former first-round pick has not lived up to expectations at all. There is some third down pass catching value. I don't know if his schematic fit is great for what the Chiefs have done overall on offense. He knows Joe Burrow pretty well. And honestly, if you're just going to get the gang back together again, I think going that route for that LSU offense years ago isn't the worst idea out there. But the numbers are not very good. This would be a cheap 1 year, maybe a little bit more than the vet minimum deal. And you probably still look to draft somebody or keep mixing. You could go Edwards-Helaire, Brown. You would need a better third back or above those two guys or one of those guys as well. Today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. You are running out of time to do Prize Picks for the NFL. It's daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 6 player stat projections, more than or less than, on those stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can do Super Bowl stuff. There's some fun options for you on Prize Picks from that perspective. Then NBA, college basketball, esports, if you're into that. I know I'm not, producer Chris is not, but executive producer Jack certainly is. Get going on Prize Picks while you can for the NFL because they're giving you a freebie for the Super Bowl. It's a half passing yard for Patrick Mahomes on the more than. It's a no-brainer. I'll pair with 88.5 yards on the ground from Christian McCaffrey and 7 catches for Travis Kelce. Excuse me. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Links in the comments section and the description of today's show. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Let's talk tight ends. I'm not doing just like the top 20 free agents available. That's not very realistic. So no Dalton Schultz here. I think Hunter Henry is very gettable for this team. 1-year deal. Get to go with Joe Burrow instead of Mac Jones. I think that's appealing for a lot of NFL players. If you want to go to the 1-year, cash in again thing, Hunter Henry and Noah Fant, the Seahawks tight end, formerly the Broncos, certainly makes sense. Those are guys that have premium draft pedigree and I think would be upgrades over your entire crop of free agent tight ends right now. A more veteran option is Gerald Everett. It's not, the sexiest name, but all 3 guys can give you some more explosive plays, especially Fant has the athletic ability to do so, and a little bit more production than what you had at tight end this past year. And if the Bengals are going to keep targeting tight ends, I need somebody better. Henry offers some good red zone stuff. Everett's getting up there in age, but has great athletic ability. He's much more of a short yardage or short area of the field guy this past year. Fant can give you some big plays. He at almost the same number of yards as those other 2 guys on 10 fewer catches or more than that figure. So tight end, when I get to April, I need some outside veteran. I can't go into my draft with Tanner Hudson and Drew Sample there. That's not going to work. Sign somebody for 5, 6, whatever the number ends up being. Millions, by the way, not $5, to be clear. Now, we will have more Bengals news and rumors for you all off season long. Hit that sub button if you haven't already. YouTube.com/Bengals TV. I don't think Jordan Williams will return. I think he'll be a little bit too expensive. So some offensive tackle guys to consider. Michael Onwenu has played both guard spots and right tackle. Now, he's been shuffled around a lot. I think right tackle or left guard have kind of been 2 of his better positions. Good news! You could use both of those. Now, he'll be a little bit more expensive. And if you lock him into one of your starting spots, might take away the route you would want to go for the draft pick. I think maybe the ideal emergency option at right tackle is Jermaine Illuminor, the Raiders option. He can start for you at right tackle. He's not going to be a superstar, but he wouldn't preclude you from drafting a player in round 1. He also wouldn't put you in a spot where you have to take a tackle in round 1. Gives you some flexibility if a great player slides, then you can maybe take somebody in round 2 or whatever. And worst case, he's a nice swing tackle for you. Trent Brown kind of fills a similar mold, by the way. He's a little bit more vocal sometimes about things not going the way he wants them to go in New England. Might not be back there. But you've got options that maybe aren't going to be at. Frankly, all 3 guys I think should be less than Jonah Williams, who, as we've said before, it's going to surprise you how much money he gets on the open market. Now, when it comes to this kind of new-ish the past couple of years, Bengals front office, Katie Blackburn's done some great stuff with more control for the organization. What is your confidence level in the Bengals right now? Scale it for me from 1 to 10. Some other defensive tackles I want to mention here. Leonard Williams, who offers you some 3-tech and pass rushing. On the inverse, it's Grover Stewart. If you're not going to pay DJ Reader to come back and you want a locked-in starter at nose guard, Grover Stewart would be a home run fit. Some cheaper options in the 1-tech, 3-technique mold. Raekwon Davis, the former Bama defensive tackle, never has quite lived up to the size that he offers and the upside, but there's some intrigue there. And former first-round pick Javon Kinlaw, who is really not up to expectations, could also be kind of a buy low option that, hey, you just got to be better than Zachary Carter. Maybe you can make that happen. The numbers, by the way, obviously Stewart's and Davis's sack numbers are lower. They're more run stoppers. Leonard Williams has the best numbers of any of those guys. He's a tier below the Wilkins, Jones, Madubuike grouping, but could still run upwards of at least $10 million. Stewart probably doesn't quite get there because nose guards don't get paid that much these days. Davis and especially Kinlaw, I think, will be much cheaper, but Kinlaw showed more than he had in most seasons, which is an upward trend you do love to see. Two other names I'll mention to get us to 20 here. If you're going to move on from Joseph Asai down in the near future here, you can always bring back Carl Lawson. Kind of like how you signed Terrell Basham last offseason. Cheap one-year deal, fight for a roster spot. When healthy, he has been good. He just hasn't been that healthy and active, but bringing him home, I'm not opposed to it. And if you really want to break the bank for a season, I think might actually get to the open market. I don't think Antoine Winfield does, by the way. Xavier McKinney stands out. You got to figure out what to do with Daxton Hill. In hindsight, I certainly think they wish they would have paid Jesse Bates, but we knew there was going to be a problem there. Safety play was pretty poor this year. Hill was up and down, really inconsistent. I'm not out on him, but if you want to get an impact safety, McKinney stands out as the best of the realistic bunch until cuts happen. I think there could be some good safeties on the open market.